we are going to continue working in our application here. Open our second view controller here, as you see. So we have it open already. Close down the left panel there. That's good. So we have more space to work with. Here we have all of our items, all of our UI labels and image view. We have this data, which is of type string, and we are setting it to an empty string, so to initialize it. And of course, here we have it as a test. We just set our name label to receive the data we are getting from the previous screen. Great. The goal, of course, is to actually populate our second screen here, our bio screen, we could call it that way, I guess. We need to be able to populate data pertaining to the current musician we are looking at. So in this case, if we have Bach, of course, we'll have his name, country of origin, and years he's lived. And of course, the little bio. And I went ahead and got all of that information already off of Wikipedia. I'll save you the details. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all the information into our code here. We know that our data is bringing in the name of musician we are looking into, we are interested in learning about. In this case, if we click on Bach, naturally we should see Bach's information. That said, we are going to go ahead and create a function here at the bottom. Let's close that down. So we're going to go ahead and give it a little more space. I'm going to go ahead and say func, call this setup bio. So this function will just set up some information. If data, again, this data string here that we're getting from our previous controller view, if data is equal to Bach, right, then we need to do Bach logic here, meaning we need to populate all of the Bach information. Else, if data is equal to handle, we want to do handle logic there. Else, the last case here would be, of course, if the data is Vivaldi. So we're just going to go ahead and say an empty body as we did with others. Of course, it has to be 2 equals there to signify comparison. Now, if we look back, let's open up our left panel here. So let's go ahead to assets here. Let's see what we have. We have Bach image, as you can see here, Bach, Handel, and Vivaldi. This is good because then we will be able to change the actual image here in code so that it reflects in the musician we are interested in learning more about. In this case here, we have our handler here, artist image view, so we can actually change the image view. In order to change the image view or to add the actual image, what we could do, all of these, of course, dynamic, we go ahead and say artist image view dot image property is equal to UI image, because that's what we need to use in order to fetch an actual image. And as you can see there, there is a name. So we say enter and we pass the, in this case, it's going to be Bach. And notice this convention here, the name is the parameter we're passing in, and it has to be a string of the same name that we have set to be in our image. So in this case, it's Bach, and they have to be the same. So we can go ahead and do the same with Handel. So we can go ahead and say artist image view dot image UI image, and we're gonna call this Handel. Let's copy this. In any other case, of course, we know it's going to be Vivaldi, like that. Let's save and run. All right, let's go ahead and go Bach. There's the Bach image. Handel, there's not Handel image. What's going on? Well, it turns out the Bach image is the default one, and we did all here inside of our setup bio, but we are not calling it. Remember, because if you create a function, you need to call it in order for the content, the logic to actually appear. Very common mistake. It happens to all of us. So in this case, let's copy this setup bio inside our view did load, because that's the first method that it's called. So we're going to call it there. Save now. Run again. There it is. Let's go back. Oh, there it is, Bach. Oh, perfect. Go Handel. There is Handel. Vivaldi, there's Vivaldi. Great. Our application is indeed working. It's dynamic now. It's getting the correct image. The other information we need is the bio, text, the year, and the country. Like I said earlier, I already went ahead and got all of the information off of Wikipedia so that it makes it a little bit easier on you. So I'm going to just copy and paste the code here so that you don't have to type it all or watch me type it all. I'm going to go ahead and copy all that information here from a different window. I'm going to paste it. Whoa, that's a lot of information here. As you can see here, I created an array. So I said let musician array be equal the first item of the array. You can see we have a comma here. This is the first item, the first index. I have Bach information. The second index, you can see there because we have a comma here. We have Vivaldi. And the last one, we have Handel. So I figured this would be a good way of actually setting things up. There's different ways we could have done this, but this is a really good way. This is the best at our level right now. And the next thing we need to do that I forgot to do is let's go ahead and attach this bio text view here to our code. That way we can reference it. We go Control, drag and drop, call this bio text view, connect, and there it is. That's our outlet. There we go. So now we have a way of accessing our text view, our bio information here. Perfect. Back to our setup bio here. After our artist image view, what we can do, we can now start setting things up, the musician information. Now remember also that we have our musician class here, which is the class that represents a musician. So let's go back. So we're going to be using this class here to set things up. Create an instance of that class. So we can create an object. So say let musician going to be equal. So I'm going to instantiate a musician. So there it is, class musician. Right? The beauty of Xcode, it knows exactly what we are trying to accomplish. So that's what we need. And remember, we need to actually go ahead and initialize certain values here. So let's go ahead. First name is a string. So for us, we're going to call Bach, right? And then the bio, we know that our bio for Bach is in the first index of our musician array. So we can access that by just calling musician array and pass in our first, which is index 0. And then we have the country. The country, we're just going to go ahead and put Germany. And the year, in this case, we want the string because we are just gonna type in the year here. Let's 1685 through 1750. So now we've created a musician Bach object, which we can then use to populate all of these labels here. I decided to use a class musician for this project, mainly because I wanted you to start thinking more and more about classes and objects and how they interact in the real world when you create your applications. It makes things much, much easier and easier to read. As you can see, we created this musician class object. As you can see, we fill this object with all the properties of a musician, which means then we're able then to use this properties inside of our labels. How we do that? Well, now we can go ahead and say name label, which is this label here. And at the top here, you can see this name label. Dot text is equal. Now we can use our musician we just created here, right? Because that's our object. We can say aim musician dot, and we can so get name. And there we go. That's all. Now what's happening, we are getting the name of this musician, which in this case, we set it to be Bach. All right, you see now the beauty of classes and objects? Good. Okay, so next we go ahead and say bio text dot text. We're gonna say it's equal to musician again dot get bio. Okay, say country label dot text is equal to musician dot get country. All right, so year label dot text is equal to musician dot get year. Great. We created here our object of type musician, so our musician. We filled in the musician with information, and now we are setting things up. And as you can see, it's much easier as opposed to having to go and type everything ourselves. Now we know that our object musician has all the information, and now we can go and just retrieve that information and set it to our labels. Okay, let's do the same here. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this because it's gonna be the same musician. So we created another one here. Now instead of a buck, we're gonna call this handle. The bio is gonna be 1. In fact, it's going to be 2 because if we go back here, we see the handle is the last index of the array, of this whole array here, musician array. So it has to be 2. And country is also Germany, and the years, I'm going to go ahead and copy here on my notes to the left here, so that we don't have to type it all. And there we go. Now we have our musician handle, and we can do the same thing. Just copy this and paste there. Now we have it all ready for our handle. And else, which is the last one, is going to be copy all of this, paste here. In fact, we don't need this. Let's go ahead and delete that. Okay, this is what we need. In this case, it's going to be Vivaldi. So it's going to be 1 because that's the second item in our array. Country, Italy. I'm going to copy the years. And there we go. If we save this, now we have everything set up. In our setup bio, we have if data is Bach, we change the image view to reflect Bach, to show Bach. We create a musician object and we instantiated it with all the information, in this case Bach, Germany, and the year. And we of course went ahead and pulled from our musician array the data about the bio for Bach, and then we set up our labels. We did the same with the case in cases where we have handle that we're getting, and we did the same thing as we did with Bach. And later we repeated the same process with Vivaldi. Wonderful. Let's save this and give it a run. All right, let's see. With any luck, the things should be working perfectly. So click, there is Bach, and look at that. We've got Bach, Germany, 1685, 1750, the bio, and it's scrollable and everything. You can go ahead and read, go back, handle. There it is, Mr. Handel. There's his picture, name, Germany, the years, Vivaldi, Antonio Lucio Vivaldi. I don't know if I said it right, but you get the idea, I guess. All right, so Vivaldi, Italy, 1678, 1741, and we have some bio as well. You can see here, we were able to put together a great application, use all the tools we learned, and most specifically, we used classes. We used the object-oriented programming practices because we created one class called Musician, which takes care of all of the properties and methods we needed to create an entity class called Musician. So we can create actually an object of Musician and use that throughout the entire application. There's so many good things about using the Musician class, because now if we decided later to change or add more items to our Musician class, if you look at that, if we want to add more item to it, we can go ahead and add more properties. We can go ahead and set things up inside of our init method. We can put many other methods that we want. We are more flexible to go ahead and add things to this class here. And once that it's done, we don't have to change a lot of things in our Musician class instantiation. And I can give somebody else this Musician class that I created, and they can work on it and change things, or just use it. They can just use it, not even go ahead and open the Musician class at all. That's the idea I'm trying to convey to you about object-oriented programming way of thinking, because that will save you a lot of time and will make your code more readable and more efficient, robust, and most importantly, more extensible. So you can make it bigger. You can extend your code that way. All right, great. Well, congratulations for making this far. You have this application now that is working perfectly, as you can see here. And there's a lot of things you can do. You can go ahead and add a nicer background color, add an image, and in our bio window, in our bio view here, You can go ahead and perhaps make this image a little bit bigger, add a background where we have our bio and align things, and change the font and add more functionality to this. So there's a lot of things you can do with this. And that's the whole idea, right? When we build this application, when I show you how to build an application, the idea is that you take what you've learned, and take it to the next level. So build something better out of it. That's the whole idea. That's how you're going to learn. That's how you become proficient in mobile development, in iOS 9 development. Congratulations, and I'll see you in the next video.